the Atlantic. So I'll hand over to you, Javier. This is a joint paper by several authors, mainly UK universities. But Javier is at the Liverpool's London Moores University. Sorry,
Okay.
Liverpool John Moores. Apologies.
Yeah. It's all right. So yeah, let me get my timer so I won't run over. So thank you very much for allowing me for this opportunity to share our work. I'm just gonna move the stupid some things. So yeah, so this is a collaboration between a different group of people and backgrounds. So so first of all, I'm a web scientist, but I have a background in design. Dr. Patricia Murrieta, she's from digital humanities. Nick, he's from history. Lois South, she's from history from John Moores, but then she carried on to do a master in museum studies. So she's very interested in museum studies and BAME network, especially Black communities. And then Chris Monahan is a next student of mine from graphic design and illustration. So it's a very multidisciplinary and actually, well, mainly interdisciplinary project where we try to explore different narratives of the transatlantic slave trade, especially since Liverpool John Moores University is based in Liverpool. So what we did a series of objects, but mainly one of the perhaps prettiest in terms of hedonic qualities. One of the nice things that we did was this installation where we wanted to tell the story of all these different contributions of African peoples around the world. And we decided to do it through music, despite that we have a website with plenty of extra information about the soundtracks, about the background, about the data we used. The main purpose was to actually develop this kind of interactive device that could help other cultural organizations to present this kind of narratives, especially to enable subaltern groups to produce their narratives. That's the interface. So that interface basically is an installation that works by touching, or you can just sense. They're using conductive sensors that when they're hovered or just with the conductivity of the same body, it will send the data to this microcontroller and it will trigger that sound. So what you see in the center, that's the inside of that cone that we build as the installation. So the important thing is that we're using conductive ink, and this enables also to reduce the expensiveness of these materials, and also thinking about the challenges behind these cultural organizations, such as museums, to enable and adopt these kind of technologies. So I will walk you through a little bit of our thinking strategy and process of how we came up with this kind of approach. So we started this research from a research group that I created in Liverpool John Moores University called Pre-Interactive. So we use interactive tools since one of my main areas of research is the role of tangible interaction for engagement with information. But since I work now in an art school, one of my main challenges is how do we enable these kind of complex technologies or technology in general to artistic communities, cultural communities, and subaltern groups. So based on that research, we started exploring the role of the transatlantic slave trade. So we collaborate with a lot of historians. We collaborate a lot with people from digital humanities, especially from Lancaster. So we were very lucky that Lancaster University funded this project. So Nick Radburn, one of our collaborators, he worked in this project called Slave Voyages. So they created this massive, super, almost close to big data database where they managed to quantify every single transaction of enslaved people that took place within those 200 years of the slave trade through the transatlantic slave trade. So from the data, from digital humanities perspective, we started analyzing all this data, and we realized from the, let's say, Northwest perspective, so Lancaster, Liverpool, we got a lot of relationship with the transatlantic slave trade, but most of the data, most of the narratives provided by organizations is still very Anglo-centric. Once we started analyzing the data, we realized there's a lot of people that ended up traveling or these diasporas ended up in Latin America. And once we start analyzing these different biopolitical relationships, so the relationships of how indigenous peoples around Latin America, especially Mexico, they started adopting and embracing these cultures from Africa. So one important thing is that one of the first points of decolonization in America, as in the continent, was started from Mexico. So the adoption of these African cultures within the biopolitical sphere of indigenous cultures enabled a lot of Latin American groups to merge with the African contribution of their instruments. And that's what we wanted to showcase. So now that we had these different groups to display, we needed to find out a way to create this common language. So we didn't know if we wanted to use music or not, but it seemed quite natural for us to trigger this. So music became this new thing after this merge of African music, African musics and the music from the Americas. So after doing mainly Lois and the people from Lancaster, they started carrying on this research, this historic research. So we started collaborating further and further, and we started doing the analysis behind what kind of images to use. So it's very difficult to be race neutral. So Chris Monahan, the illustrator, we commissioned him to kind of get this neutral race depiction through the illustrations, but at the same time making sure that all the information is integrated with the system, because at the end this is a tangible system that is meant to be interact with. Of course, when we designed this, it was before the lockdown, so now it's more difficult to get this to be touched, or perhaps this raises now new questions around what kind of challenges do we have. But another interesting bit, for instance, from my web science perspective, is that one of my main questions is, okay, we need also people to, or cultural heritage organizations to share this data. So I started doing some research, we started doing some research and trying to find the soundtracks that could relate to the modern music from Latin America, or perhaps a piece of music that was able to showcase that specific collaboration between them, or perhaps a historic element. So of course, one of the most difficult ones is the Middle Passage, that transition between both of the continents in the travel through the Atlantic, through the ships, where all the enslaved people were treated as cargo. So there's no recordings of that, so we just have to choose some sort of a soundtrack that enabled that kind of narrative. So we try to reuse and repurpose all this data from all this, especially open data from organizations such as the British Library and the British Museum, as well as other cultural heritage organizations around the world. So the important thing is that since we are in a university, another point that we wanted to highlight is the role that universities play within this kind of investigation and research. So the development of the project, it took us no more than 2 months to carry out. I mean, of course, basing on everything that we had already from the slave voyages databases. But the important thing is that we had historians, 2 historians, illustrators, designers. We have this massive infrastructure in Liverpool John Moores University that, since I teach there, I can just go there any day and just start playing with materials and start experimenting. So we wanted to showcase as well the strength of partnering with universities as these epicenters of knowledge and tools. So so that's one of the most interesting things that we wanted to show. We also produced a research website where we showcase all our work. We started doing some interfaces to showcase all different slave places in Liverpool. So for people to explore, for people to engage with in a more colloquial way, the data that we gathered and all the data that we analyzed behind that. So the website presents as well extra information behind the music, why did we chose it, the relationship to that historic context, but most importantly is showcasing all that research, all those collaborations with the organizations in a way that makes it accessible. One of the main challenges also behind museums and cultural heritage organizations is that the digital technologies are there, but they're very difficult to adopt from digital divide perspective. And that's something that we can facilitate as well. So something as simple for a computer scientist or from someone from human-computer interaction is very simple to use an API and load that data there. But perhaps museums don't have that infrastructure to present this kind of information. So what we wanted to do is showcase all this diversity behind the research package and how it culminated in these animations and the installation that we can build cheaply, accessible, and in order for it to be adopted and adapted by the same cultural heritage organizations. Because the important thing is that all this data is open source, open access. We're using APIs which are open, so it's always able to be repurposed. And that's one of the most important things that we're trying to facilitate cultural organizations to repurpose and reuse all these methods that we're using. So, well, if you know of any museum that will be happy to implement these kind of technologies or develop these kind of collaborations, I mean, as a designer as well, as a school of art where I'm based, we're always happy for finding more case studies and looking for scenarios for impact and engagement. So that's it. Well, I'm 2 minutes short, but just to conclude, this collaboration is I mean, the important thing behind this kind of work is the collaboration also between the different disciplines and institutions. So being in the Northwest, we are an epicenter of culture for the north of England. So it gives us a lot of tools, a lot of empowerment with the local communities. So within the research from Pre-Interactive, we're trying to figure out how do we make all these complex technologies, especially tangible interaction, how do we make these tools available for all these different groups, and especially subaltern groups to decolonize all these Anglocentric narratives, to enable these underground, these bottom-up approaches, and enable those voices through all these different kind of tools. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier. I'll give you a little clap. I know nobody else can clap, but I'm doing it for everybody. So we do have time for questions, although I can't see any at the moment. But well, one thing you could do, Javier, is at least type in the link to the website on chat, perhaps. Yeah. I think people might be interested in looking at that. But it looks like a very exciting project. It's great to see so many people involved in producing it all. Yes. Do you have plans for the future? What's...
So we are, I mean, so the main point is that we are, well, I'm a web scientist, and since I teach design, I have a background in design, I'll just do this. I mean, this is what I do for fun in a way, right. But my research is mainly about web science and cultural heritage. So we are still finding ways of making data engaging. So, so a lot of the work is through tangible interaction and trying to find ways of enabling a lot of decolonial narratives, especially from the semantic web perspectives. We're trying to facilitate this kind of engagement with all the different communities.
Right, and are you continuing to collaborate with your other co-authors?
Yes.
Okay, that could be a future EVA paper. That's what we're always thinking of. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, do continue.